The Anglo Boer War, as witnessed by Deneys Reitz, and written in his book Commando, a Boer War Journal of the Boer War, by Deneys Reitz. Chapter 1. Memories Tower. We lived in the Orange Free State. My father was Chief Justice in Sir John Brand's time, and subsequently in 1887 was himself elected President of the Republic. Our home was at Bloemfontein, the state capital, and here my brothers and I grew up. There were 5 of us, 2 older and 2 younger than myself, and we led a pleasant Tom Sawyer-like existence, such as falls to the lot of few boys nowadays. We learned to ride, shoot, and swim almost as soon as we could walk. And there was a string of hardy Basotho ponies in the stables, on which we were often away for weeks at a time, riding over the game-covered plains by day and sleeping under the stars at night, hunting, fishing, and camping to our heart's content, and clattering home again when we had had our fill. Sometimes my father took us with him on his long tours into the remoter districts, where there was more hunting and more camping, and great weapon shows held by the Boer commandos to do him honour. Our small country was a model one. There were no political parties, nor, until after the Jameson Raid of 1895, was there any bad blood between the Dutch and the English. We had no railways, and the noise of the outside world reached us but faintly, so that in our quiet way we were a contented community, isolated hundreds of miles from the seaboard. In 1894, when I was 12 years old, we were taken to Europe. It was a wonderful experience for inland-bred boys to journey to the coast, to cross the ocean in a ship, and to see the great crowds and cities of the old world. We went first of all to England, where we stayed for a while in London, marvelling at the things we saw. Thence to Amsterdam to visit the senior branch of our family that had remained in Holland when our ancestors immigrated to South Africa long ago. The head of the old stock lived in a house on the Herengracht, a wealthy man apparently, for he kept many servants and had fine paintings on his walls. As our republic had taken its name from the House of Orange, my father was well received by the little Queen of the Netherlands, and the court and people made much of us. Next, we travelled to Paris to meet Casimir Perier, the newly elected president of the French. He took us to lay a wreath on the grave of Sadi Carnot, his predecessor, lately assassinated by an anarchist at Lyons. From there we went to Brussels to see Monseigneur Geslin, our consul. His house stood in the Rue de la Blanchisserie, and he told us that it was the one in which the Duchess of Richmond had given her famous ball on the eve of Waterloo. We were presented to King Leopold, an old man with a hooked nose and a long white beard, who extended only his little finger in greeting, perhaps because we belonged to a republic. From Belgium, we went to Hamburg to take ship across the North Sea to Edinburgh, and from there to visit the Cathcarts at Oceandrain on the River Doon. My father had studied law in Scotland, and my grandfather before him had studied agriculture, and they had both spent much time at Oceandrain. So my father wished his sons in turn to carry on the tradition of friendship, which for nearly 100 years linked the two families. My grandfather first went to Scotland in 1816. He met Sir Walter Scott, to whom he took a lion skin, which the poet Thomas Pringle had sent from Cape Town, and he became intimate with the great writer. In latter days in South Africa, he loved to tell of their meetings and of the banquet at which he was present, when Scott, for the first time, admitted that he was the author of the Waverley novels. Both my grandfather and my father had returned to South Africa with a deep love of Scotland and Scotch literature, and at our home scarcely a night passed without a reading from Burns or Scott, so that we felt as if we were among our own people. From Oceandrein, we went to London to meet Sir George Grey, who, as Governor of the Cape, had been a friend of my father many years before. My father used to say that if the English had sent more men like him to South Africa, our history would have been a happier one. And although I was only a boy, and Sir George Grey a very old man, he made a deep impression upon me. A something of inward beauty not easily described, but which I have not yet forgotten. From London we sailed for South Africa. On our return, my brothers and I were received by our less fortunate playfellows like pilgrims, safely returned from Mecca. So hazardous an undertaking did our journey seem to them in those days. We took up our old carefree life once more, all unaware of the storm that was brewing between the white races in the Transvaal. The Jameson raid had not yet brought matters to a head, but there was trouble in the air. President Kruger and the Commandant-General Piet Joubert came frequently to Bloemfontein on official visits to my father, and we eagerly questioned them and listened to their stories of hunting and of the wars against the natives and the British of long ago. Sir Henry Locke, Governor of the Cape, also visited us, as did Cecil Rhodes, a big, florid man who cracked jokes with us boys, but on whose political aims my father looked askance. These two tried to prevent the Free State from entering into an alliance with the Transvaal, but they did not succeed, and a treaty was made with President Kruger, wherein we agreed to stand by the Transvaal in case of war with England, a promise which the Free State loyally fulfilled. My brothers and I did not understand the import of all this coming and going of noted men, and life ran on pleasantly enough until 1895. My father's health failed and he had to resign. We went to live at Claremont, a cramped suburb of Cape Town, greatly missing our horses and the freedom of our wide northern uplands. When my father recovered from his long illness, we settled in the Transvaal, where he soon became Secretary of State under President Paul Kruger. My eldest brother, aged 19, was now sent to Europe to study law, and after a while the rest of us were put back to school at Bloemfontein until the middle of 1899. During our absence at the Cape, the ill-fated Jameson raid had taken place, and we found on our return that feeling was running high between the English and the Dutch, and even in the Free State, where differences of this kind had hitherto been unknown, there was so much ill will that people openly talked of driving the English into the sea, whereas previously we had not given these matters a thought. By July 1899, the situation had become so serious that my father ordered us up to Pretoria, as war with England seemed inevitable. We said goodbye to Bloemfontein, the town where we had been born and bred, and where we had spent such happy days, and journeyed north, leaving behind us the peace of boyhood to face years of hardship, danger, and ultimate exile.